We're going to record. We're on. Okay. And we'll let Stephanie in. All right. We're getting there. Unmute her.
Whoops.
Hi.
Hey. There I am. Hi.
We're already recording, just so you know, just because I don't want to.
Oh. Okay. Hey, everybody.
I just hit it because I don't want to forget to hit it. So.
Awesome. That's a good deal.
Okay. We'll give a couple more minutes here.
So how's everybody doing tonight? I want you to tell us in the comments if this is your first Zoom with us. We want to know if it's your first time. And I want all of you to just say, hey, say hi in the comments. Tell us where you are from, if you're currently homeschooling or thinking about it. Maybe you're doing virtual schooling this year. We just love to know. And it's fun for everybody to get to know each other. So everybody say hey.
There we go.
Yay!
All right, California. How's the smoke? Oh, wait, I have to unmute you. Hold on. A second. I'm asking questions and she can't answer. All right, there we go.
Bad.
It's bad. Where in California are you?
We're in Bakersfield. We can't see fire here, but the smoke is thick. I haven't felt well all day. It's just
I was thinking, I can't imagine how you're even breathing out there. And I was thinking about nature study all day and about how this has been my sanity. Like getting outside is like seriously how I'm maintaining any semblance of sanity. I can't imagine COVID and smoke.
COVID and smoke at 112 degrees. It's
awful.
I usually walk at night, but I can't walk tonight. It's so gross.
Yeah. Well, we're all praying for you. The whole country is watching the horror. I don't know if it helps, but
yeah.
Praying helps. I don't know that watching horror helps, but everybody's really, it's not good. Not a good situation. Okay. We're getting here.
I love seeing how many people are joining us live for the first time. That's so fun. We're so glad you're here. Let's see, what time is it? Are we getting close? Oh, it is. It's 9. Should we get going?
Yep. Let's go.
Okay, let's go. We have the biggest outline we've ever had because both of us like nature study. So we're going to try to keep to time, but welcome everyone to our 4th week of Real Learning Revisited. We're talking about real learning in the home with author Elizabeth Foss. Her 2nd edition of the book Real Learning has just come out in the last couple of weeks. It's available on Amazon and at elizabethfoss.com if you don't already have your copy. And what we're doing on Thursday nights is talking through the topics of the book. So we're going chapter by chapter through the book and unpacking everything. So this is a really, really amazing opportunity for all of us to learn from Elizabeth, to ask questions, and to really get the in-depth story behind each chapter. So tonight we're going to talk a little bit about math and a lot about nature studies. So we introduced math last week, Elizabeth. At the end of we did writing last week and introduced math. But let's go through a couple of like the basics to remember for teaching math. I wanted to get you a t-shirt. I don't know if your girls told you that, but I was texting Katie saying, what size t-shirt does your mom wear? Because I was looking on Etsy. I wanted like do math every day or something. I couldn't find what I was looking for. But I wanted to send you a shirt that said do math every day because that's the motto.
Katie would have laughed about that. It's a mantra because I totally admit that I was a kindergarten and 1st grade teacher before I had kids. Loved to do math at that age. Loved my great big manipulative kit that was provided to me. Really, really liked math with a Montessori twist. Just loved it. And then really struggled, like not in the beginning with homeschooling math. I think, the early years when I just had one and then 2, 3, like I was reading through Real Learning, and I remember reading something about my third child and how like he really was pretty good at math. And but as they got older, and we're talking like middle grades, when they start to really push back against it, I was far too ready to say, yeah, whatever, we'll just do math later. And we got behind, honestly, you know, and then we paid for it dearly later when they stopped. When, I mean, I think part of it was nobody really loved it, and probably I didn't really love it. Like I wasn't giving off a, oh, I love to do algebra vibe ever. And then so later, like when you needed math for the SAT, when you needed math because you wanted to major in that in college, we paid for that a little bit. Or a lot, I don't know. I think it's all working out fine. God bless Patrick, because he comes in the clutch, right? So I got a text from Patrick an hour ago. I promise you I'm not making this up. He's in business school at Notre Dame. He texted, said he got a 90 on his first statistics test, 92, like something really good. And I was like, okay, well, I can go talk about math then. So I guess I'm kind of coming in with the lead first, but when it mattered, they all did eventually get where they needed to be. But if we did not pursue math in nearly as organized a manner in like those late elementary, middle, early high school years. And so we would get behind, and then we would have to work really hard and really argue a lot to catch up, and that stunk. Patrick is classic, you know, I remember when he was about to turn 15, he was recruited to the U17 national team for soccer, which meant he was going to leave home after never having been to school at all. He was going to leave home, go to Bradenton, Florida, live in residency with the soccer team, and go to St. Stephen's Episcopal School. They're like, well, where is he in math? I'm like, I don't even know, you know, because we had just kind of done our own thing. I never really paid much attention to the grade level. I knew we hadn't had enough algebra. They're like, okay, well, we're just going to put him in geometry. And I said, well, okay, but when's he going to get algebra? Like, when is he going to be able to do this? And the answer is when he got back from the national team. We just flipped it all around and, you know, eventually worked it out. But that's not how I would do it. And that's not how I would tell anybody to do it. I would tell anybody and everybody, and I tell the 3 girls who are left here now, do math every day. Like, I am a strong proponent of the manipulatives and the programs that, you know, pull in all those things when they're little, but I'm an even stronger proponent of pick something and stick to it. Because part of what I did was, when they would struggle, and my kids don't struggle with a lot of things. So if they would struggle with math and I don't think I can do this, I'd be like, well, it must be the program. Let's find something else. And that didn't do any of us any favors, because really what we needed to do is say some things are hard and we need to learn together right now to do the hard things. So I'm going to sit next to you because this is hard, and we're going to do the hard thing together, and we're both going to grow in virtue, because that's what math's for. So that's where I have it. That's about it.
Yep. That's good. Now, I know that you're a big fan of the hands-on, the manipulatives, the Charlotte Mason method. Are you a proponent of a certain math philosophy or math program or anything? Or for anyone who's on the call, who's just thinking about math, or, you know, there's a lot out there. What advice do you have?
So I have an unfair advantage because my oldest daughter is certified Montessori teacher. She has her master's in education with a concentration in Montessori. So she's got all the Montessori tricks up her sleeve. And this has been a long time coming. She's been working in a Montessori school, probably 8 years. She started volunteering in high school. So she would come home. So in the last 8 years, you know, my youngest is 11. So she was 3. So those those other girls, the last three certainly have done primarily Montessori math. What works for us really is Oak Meadow math up through 8th grade, and then a shift to algebra using Saxon, which is tedious, but is proven. And so the Oak Meadow math, we found works, that it gives me a pattern to follow as they get older. I'm trying to think, I think the 5th grade, they start writing the lessons towards the kids, letting them take some ownership. Oak Meadow tends to be fairly manipulative, but very visual. And it's just worked for us. But there are lots of programs that I think work great. I think Saxon's newly designed elementary program is good. It's really good. And it brings in a lot of the manipulatives. I know people who have done fabulously well with Singapore math. So there's a lot out there. A teaching textbook, no, not teaching textbooks. Matthew C. is another one we've tried. We've tried them all, honestly. But Matthew C. is another one that's very manipulative. It's very visual. Their teaching videos are awesome. There's so much more out there than there was 15 years ago. You can do math. Just do math. Do it. That's really kind of it. Oh my God.
Yep. Now, what about for the advanced years?
All right.
If
so
you got older kids.
Yeah, I think that you want to, this is where I think it's really helpful to school year round to build in lots of time. I've definitely done online classes where they have to be accountable to other people. It's hard because the class is going to move at the class's pace, and you have got to help that kid keep up. That's hard. That said, particularly if we're talking about boys in high school, that online or that accountability to somebody outside of you, especially when it comes to hard topics, is priceless. Like, it is so great and so necessary for that kid to be accountable to somebody else so that you can come alongside, you can be the cheerleader, you can be the help, you can be the tutor, but you're not necessarily the heavy, and all that extra emotion isn't clouding what's already hard. So I would encourage you to look for that, but the ideal is a self-paced program that has some accountability built in. So the ideal really is to find a tutor who's a real person, who can pace it so that you're not plowing through it too fast, especially those first couple of years of high school math, because it's hard to keep up for a lot of them. And then as they get older, they're going to have to learn to keep up. That first year, that first semester of college math is just, it goes quick, and you got to know how to do it. So we've got to get them ready to do that in case that's what they want to do.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Any last minute advice for math before we go on to my favorite topic?
Be able to go outside afterwards.
There you go. There's the segue.
I do have one though, and it goes with the segue. Now we do Bible study. We do 15 minutes of a catechism, and then we go immediately to math. And it's not a negotiation. Like, this is what we do next. And I think that's good. I think it's good for math to be like, let's just do it. And before anything else from the day can get in the way, let's get it done. So, and then we do go outside. So.
Yeah, that's good. All right. So let's transition. Let's talk about nature study. Let's start with Charlotte Mason, because we both love Charlotte Mason, and her philosophy of getting kids outside, I know, has influenced both of us greatly. Kind of introduced to us her idea of the role that nature and being outside plays in a child's life.
So, and you know what? Charlotte Mason herself has influenced the way I look at this. Charlotte Mason lived in the Lake District in Ambleside in England, and beautiful, beautiful walking territory. And she personally took a walk, a long walk every day. She lived into her 80s and she was walking. So she just knew the benefit to human beings to be outside, to know the plants around them, to be familiar with the names of the animals. Like, she believed it and she lived it, and her life was an inspiration. And when she writes about nature, you want to go outside. She thought that children under 8 should be outside playing 3 to 4 hours a day. And I thought, the first time I read that, I thought, wow, that's a lot. And then I thought about, like, when I was little, I mean, my mom routinely just said, go outside. Like, what are you doing in the house? Go. I mean, it happened. That was just a thing. And I think particularly when the weather was decent, I was outside 3 or 4 hours a day. We rode our bikes and we played with neighborhood kids and we did all those outside things. And then in terms of specific study, she wanted you to dedicate a half day every week to actually studying nature. So we're kind of talking about two things that converge. We're talking about getting our kids outside, getting ourselves outside more, which is kind of one of my soapboxes. I mean, I just think that, and we were talking about this earlier, I think it's really key to our mental and physical health, especially now. Like, I think we need to be outside. That's where we're breathing, unless we're in California or Oregon or Washington. That's where we're taking deep breaths. That's where we're, the risk of disease is so incredibly low. That's where kids can be loud. All these kids, well, maybe I shouldn't tell you what she said, but my granddaughter was talking the other day and to another kid outside, and the warning was to be quiet, and because my dad might be working, and she said something like, yeah, and if he's working, we make too much noise, he won't have any manners. Like, okay, so our kids are in this environment where a lot of us are working at home and everything is like this. Let's go outside and be loud and be, so I think the outside part of outside is important. And then the nature study part comes with it. So we send them outside to burn off that energy, right? We send them outside because they're way creative out there. We need to send them outside with nothing to do and let them be bored, and, or to suggest something like, why don't you make a little village over there? And, we build fairy gardens, or, why don't you build a fort? I've seen kids do amazing things if they're just allowed to play. So it teaches them responsibility. It teaches, they're going to learn pretty fast that if you pull something out of the water that lives in the water and you leave it out of the water too long, it's going to die. If you pull that plant up because you want to keep it, but you don't take care of it, it's going to die. Whatever. They learn to have some sense of responsibility. They're being stimulated differently, just the sunshine and the way the breeze feels and the way they are smaller in a big space. All those things are huge. And that gross motor development is so important, just to be able to play large. All of that matters, and it happens much, much better outside. Moving, these kids need to move, right? And I do think that when we're doing something close up with a lot of concentration, like math, it's good to, even if you do a 15-minute run around the block, it's really, really good for kids to sharpen their focus when you're alternating. Yeah. The wiggles are real, and we need to get them go, let them wiggle. So I think those are, you want to let them be someplace that's alive, and someplace that fosters that sense of wonder and amazement, and nothing does that quite like nature. So it's really good to get them out in it. I mean, you've got a bunch of boys, don't you think?
Oh yeah, absolutely. And I love that Charlotte Mason believes that you should like not have too many toys outside. Like the backyard doesn't need to be full of toys, because if it's not, they'll find the sticks and the stones and the dirt and the sand and the trees, and all of a sudden they will have a magical imaginary land and play, and it's just so creative if there's not a lot of man-made stuff out there. So the more you can just let them be bored, you will see their imagination just take off and their creativity take off, and it's beautiful and exciting to watch. So just letting them be out there and letting them have that space to be creative is really, really good. And then they bring that creativity and that imagination back inside, back to their books, back to their school. It affects everything if they're allowed to have that time and that freedom to really let their mind and their hands and their bodies just be free and explore.
Totally agree. I totally agree. I just think, and I think we need to be, I mean, I live someplace now where I have a magical backyard. Like my backyard is legit amazing. I didn't even know it was amazing before we moved in. And every day I just am in awe of the gift that it is. But our first house, actually our first house had a pretty amazing backyard. We lived in a townhouse that backed to a creek. So there was a forested creek behind us. And then in the front, like the houses were in a U, and there was like an island that was treed. And my little boys were convinced, or had convinced each other, that, you know, they were Peter Pan and this was where the Lost Boys lived. And I mean, for years, they perpetuated that whole island thing was going. And then the last house that we had, our backyard was big and flat and very often a soccer field. But it wasn't very imaginative. Like I had to take them places to give them something imaginative to work with. So I am cognizant that not everybody is able to just put kids in the backyard and sit on their back stoop and watch them play. Like sometimes it's harder than that. But I do remember piling people in a stroller and walking a mile to some place where we could do that. And the walk did everybody good. And by the way, my 3-year-old could do that walk. It's, you know, they can do it. So I encourage you, if you live someplace that doesn't have that ready access to so much outdoor stimulus, to find a place nearby. And almost every place has a place. I was listening to an interview today. We're living in Connecticut now, and this interview was a woman who had lived in New York City and had left in June to go live in, I don't know, Vermont maybe, because the city was dead and dying, and, you know, she was going to get out. And they were talking about how she went back. And the funny thing was, at the end of the interview, she said, you know, all I need is nature and water. And I have that here. She said, I live on the island of Manhattan and I can get to Central Park. But you think, okay, this woman she's living in New York City, and she's talking about one of the big appeals is that there's nature and water. So it can be found, right? I think.
Mm-hmm.
I think.
Absolutely. Oh yeah. Yep. It can for sure. All right. So let's see where I was just talking with you and I don't even know where we are in the notes here.
I think we'll talk about maybe specifics on nature study, like why.
Okay. Yeah.
Because you know, the play outside part is critical, and I think one way that we can get a gauge on how much they're outside is, you know, for every hour you want to spend in front of a screen, make sure we've spent an hour outside, and real quick your outside numbers are going to go up. But nature study itself, the idea of something more focused outside and studying nature, literally. Why bother? You know, what is it? Why are so many people talking about it? Like all those things. I think it's a cornerstone of a Charlotte Mason education. It's also very much a part of a Montessori education. You know, Montessori wants you to have that garden and wants, you know, that outdoor space. I think that both women understood that by exposing a small child to nature and helping them really observe nature, you're storing up in their brains this treasury, right, of ideas, of facts, of images, of relationships. You know, they learn what something is relative to themselves. So we have a pear tree in our yard, and in the spring that pear tree starts to leaf, and then they notice that there are little pears on it, and then the pears get bigger, and they notice that the squirrels are eating the pears almost faster than we could possibly have eaten them. Then, you know, we have to figure out, okay, when are you supposed to pick the pears? Because pears don't ripen on the tree. So pick the pear. Now we're going to ripen the pear. Today we all sat down, cut one pear into, I don't know, all my grandchildren were here, so several pieces. Everybody got a little piece of pear. But now everybody has a relationship with that pear tree, with pears in general, with the fact that our pear in Virginia, our pear tree, was a Bradford pear. There was no fruit. You know, what did they know about that tree? They knew that it had gorgeous blossoms that stunk in the spring, right? Bradford pears smell terrible. It's always the last tree, now I'm gonna cry. It's always the last tree to change in the fall. Like, it's always the last tree to lose it, to change colors. But that's the idea, that we want them to really focus and learn what is that pear tree called? What shape is that pear tree's leaf? You know, all the things that so that they have a working knowledge. You know, over time, they're going to begin, a child who does this from the time they're really little, that's all they need, really, for a strong foundation in science, is to begin to acquire that working knowledge that will structure further, more formal science study later on. So I have a quote, a Charlotte Mason quote. She says, "With this sort of appreciative knowledge for things to begin with, the superstructure of exact knowledge, living science, no mere affair of textbooks and examinations, is easily raised because a natural desire is implanted." And it's true, like, once they start to really care because they're really in it and they're really observing it, then they're going to dig deeper. It's going to happen. It nurtures curiosity. It develops a sense of wonder and of seeking to know. Like, it doesn't teach. It inspires them to ask questions, right? What is this? Why does this look like this? What would happen if this happened? You know, you come out the first morning after a freeze. Oh my goodness, what happened to everything? You know, why is it all drooping? All those things inspire questions. They start to ask the questions, and we start to have little scientists, right? Because that's what science is. It's asking questions and looking for answers. And I think that's invaluable. I think for the Christian child, it also, there is no way that you could, first of all, everybody says a garden is a metaphor for life. And the more I garden, the more I'm like, oh my gosh, so many ways, right? But there's no way to be out in creation and not appreciate the creator. You can't, you know, it's just a thing.
Yep. And the beautiful, this is my favorite part about the nature study, but the beautiful thing is, for the child, you don't have to say anything. They get that. A little child understands that something bigger is going on there, or, you know, watching a seed become a plant, or just watching the cycle of the seasons, or watching the phases of the moon, or whatever it is. the child, you don't have to preach to that child about, anything going on with God. They know, and they intuit it. And that, for me, is the most beautiful part of nature study to watch, is when they for themselves see those things and they wonder and have awe, not just for the created, but for the creature. And that is just beautiful to let them just discover that for themselves.
And care. It's just so cool that they start to really care.
Yeah.
I've had children who were not excited about bugs or dirt. And it's funny because I'm saying that, and I have 5 boys and 4 girls, and you're picturing my girls. And honestly, it was a boy who would, go sit in the middle of the blanket and be like, yeah, whatever. And then I've had children who, if there's a creek, they're in it. If there's a tree, they're up it. So different kids are gonna experience it differently. But even that kid who was always kind of, as an adult, he's remembering and appreciating all the things that he was exposed to. And it is a part of who he is still. And he's scaled a few mountains in his day now, and he's spent some time on a farm doing some really hard work, and I think he's getting it. And then there are the kids who just live for it, adore it, So
Yep.
All right, so some specifics. What is nature study? How do you do it, right? How do you do it? I mean, I think everybody does it a little bit differently.
So everybody does. I am a big proponent of starting small and really simple, because when I first read Charlotte Mason and was trying to wrap my mind around what is nature study supposed to look like, I found it completely overwhelming. And I spent a ton of time outside as a kid. I have a dad who practically has a second college degree in horticulture. I mean, he loves it so much and spends every moment he can outside doing something outside. So I have that. But I was still very overwhelmed about, like, what do I do with my 3-year-old when we go outside, and what's this going to look like? So I think the simplest start is the best start, at least for me it was, and then building. And because you're learning as the teacher, as your children are learning too. So when we started, all we did was we went to a place that had nature but no playground. I didn't want any playground around, because then the kids are going to run right to a playground. So I picked a nature preserve that had a lake, and it had trails, and it had trees, and it had flat land. Like, it had all the things depending on where I parked. And they could not, they had to play in nature. There was no playground. And I brought it to show. I buy these little plain journals. So they're just plain with paper, and they're little, so the kids can put them in their own backpacks or whatever. And they each have one, and they each have colored pencils. And I would just send them out to go find me something that you're going to sketch today. And then I would bring a little field guide that we could look up what it was. So we could look up the name, and then they could write the name of whatever they were sketching. And that's how I started. Like, no curriculum, no plan, no, just getting out. And I still have all of the journals from when they were like 3. Like, I go through them and like, oh, look at this, acorn he drew, and so I have them still. And it's so fun to go back and look and see like what they can sketch and draw now, or what they observe now. It's just amazing to see the progression in just a few years. My kids are still pretty young. So we do small. Now I do use a curriculum now. I brought it to show. This is a British curriculum called Exploring Nature with Children. And all she does, she's a Charlotte Mason educator. She gives you a theme every week for the entire year. So it's 12 months. There's 4 themes a month. I don't do all of them. I just pick what I want, but it helps me have a plan for, like, this week for us is seeds. So when you go on the walk, we're looking specifically for seeds, because in autumn, the seeds are changing, and looking for seed pods and what's on the ground and what can we bring home to sketch. So it just gives me something to like a theme to go by. But still, we keep it really, really simple, Elizabeth. We just go out there with the journals and collect stuff, always encouraging them to collect stuff. So not just when we're doing like the day, when we do nature study in the week, we do a day where I'm using this curriculum and that's like the theme of the day and what we do. But I keep a nature desk so that they can bring all their treasures and collect them through the semester. So it's a place for them to put everything they find. If they find a bird's nest, if they find a snake skin, if they find a dead bug, they can display all that and after they sketch it. And I keep the sketchbooks available in our eating kitchen all the time. So it's not like something we have to go pull off a bookshelf. They're always there so they can have access. So really simple for us. I'm sure there's a better and more complicated way.
So, I mean, I think that's about as simple and but also that's pretty much what it is. I think it's good to set a time, you know, and have them know that that's going to be their time. They can count on that every week. Sometimes I will schedule my week around the weather, you know, so I'll look at it and I'll go, oh, well, it's going to rain that day. We're going to do something this day. And like you, I tend to think about it as a nature day, not that we're out all day necessarily, but we're actually doing a nature journaling curriculum this year with them. So it's through Cornell's extension program. And I make sure that thank you. Sarah brought me her nature journal. So same deal, ring bound. But I make sure that like we start the day with that whatever nature day we have, and then we go out. In Virginia, we had our place, you know, that was our place that we went. Here, honestly, my goal this year is for them to really know their backyard well. Our backyard is loaded. Like there is enough here to keep them more than busy. But beyond our backyard and across the street up the hill is this ridiculous museum. And inside there's amazing impressionist art. There's several Monets and Cassattes and like just crazy art, but the grounds are gorgeous. The grounds are, you know, there's gardens, there's a farm, there's, you know, so I think thank you, I'm good, thank you. She brought a charger, she's like running production assistant behind me. So between those two places, that's our place, right? But the idea is, can we get to know this place really, really well? Can we watch it change over the seasons? But our place in Virginia, like 20 years of watching it change. There was a fallen tree that I took, like, lined all my kids up on, took a picture every year. Like, then all of a sudden the tree was like, you couldn't take a picture on it anymore. Like, this tree is no longer really a tree. Find another tree. But over time, to really see and know and like the back of my hand, I know that place. And we'll move on because I will cry. So how much do you facilitate? You know, how much information are we giving them? And back in the day, I'm going to date myself pretty good here. We had to carry field guides. You know, it's like, okay, so I can only carry so many books and this baby and the art stuff and the notebooks and enough water and the diaper bag, like all the things, right? Now, there's an app. Like, I use apps for identification.
So I don't even let my kids know that apps exist. I'm very old school. I have all the old field guides and I search the thrift stores for them. And if I'm like $1, but I already have a copy of this field guide, never mind, I need this one too. So I hoard field guides and I lug them because I want them to turn the pages, and I don't want my boys to find the apps too much fun. So I still do the field guides, but you know, that's just me.
So I've been using the Seek app and picture this. I had to look at my phone.
Okay.
And I didn't even know about these apps 6 months ago. But when we got to this house, and we closed at the end of May, but we didn't get here until the end of June. So no one was here for a month of major growing season. And so when we got here, I was a little bit panicked, like, what is a weed and what is a plant and what's about to bloom, but what's really going to take over, you know? So Patrick's girlfriend said, oh, there's an app for that. And we had such a good time one afternoon just running around identifying everything, and then getting those little garden markers and starting to label things so that they could watch how it would change, and so that I know in the spring that whatever that is, don't pull it because it's about to be pretty. So we did that, and I have used apps, and I don't really feel badly about it because it's so portable. It's so,
Yeah.
you
No,
know.
you shouldn't feel badly about it. I just don't want my boys being like, oh, I need the app because you know how boys are.
But so yeah, and it was the purpose then, like the purpose this spring was really, let's just do this as efficiently as we possibly can. But field guides have that great browsing thing. It's like, what is it in Laura Ingalls? It's Pa's Big Green Book. Is it green?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So it's the same
Yep.
thing. You kind of get lost in the book.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. The other thing is, you don't, like, I think moms get overwhelmed. They go out and they want to do a great nature study, and a kid brings them something and wants to know what it is. And when I first started doing nature study, I actually did it with a woman who is a phenomenal naturalist. It was like going into the woods with an encyclopedia. She knew everything, and she knew interesting, fascinating things to tell you about everything. And
Wow.
then when I was no longer doing that with her, I felt really insufficient. But I think the best thing to do there, and this is actually a really good like line. First, this is a t-shirt line. I don't know, but I'm curious too. And I don't care if it's nature study or if it's something about history. Carrie asked me something at dinner that I was like, I don't know, but I'm curious too. The best thing in the world that we can model for our kids in a school setting is that curiosity, that asking the question and how do we find the answer? Because that's life. If we can learn how to find the answers, if we can teach them that skill, your work's done. You know, if they can figure out how to find the answer. So, you know, get in the practice. I think in the field, it's really important to say, I don't know, but I'm curious too. And sometimes it means you put it in a baggie and you take it home where you can do some research. And sometimes it means you just snap a picture so you get the clearest picture. But I think I think a lot of moms think that they have to know so much about nature. You can learn right along with your kids, both the nature component and the drawing component, right? You don't have to be a great artist, and you don't have to be a naturalist. You just have to be willing to model learning for them. You know, let them see you mess up that sketch. And it's fine, because then they're going to know it's fine to take a chance and try to draw. It's okay. So
I also wanted to say, especially for the moms who have little boys, that when you start doing this, you might find, like, well, this is what happened for me. I started doing this with my, so excited to get out with our nature journals and all the things. And the first several months, I would get to our special place and they would just take off running, and they would immediately like get into character, playing that they were in the woods, and like they had I'd be like, but look at the lichen and look at the mushroom, and just like they were just off to play. And over time they learned and they matured and they started observing, but it was not like we got out of the car and instantly they were observing what was going on in the woods. It took time, and it's still taking time. So just wanted to throw that out there because I felt discouraged at first. Like, what am I doing? Why am I here? We could do this in the backyard.
How do my kids other kids have their notebooks and they're doing their thing, right?
So it can take some time, and Charlotte Mason talks a lot about habit and building habits. And when you continue to do something over and over again, it builds the habit, it builds the discipline, but it's a process. It's a process for us too, as adults. If we're not used to going out and being observant and taking the slow walk and taking the time to stop or research, we're all learning a new skill. So it's a process. It might be next fall where you're all like, it's really going well. So this year might just be a year of discovery and learning a new habit for everybody.
Well, and also, like so many things with homeschooling, if this is your first year, a lot of your learning is unlearning. You know, it's learning how to educate in a different setting, and be educated in a different setting. So if they're out there running around, they're just acclimating to their outdoor classroom, and call it that, and let yourself have a little bit of grace in that acclimation period, right? Also, the playtime, they're learning a lot of things when they're playing. I mean, if they're outside playing, it's amazing the things that they actually are observing in the course of playing out there. So we want them to do notebooks, and we want them to get detail, and we want them to do all those things, but especially for boys, don't underestimate the value of that big outdoors and playing in it.
And also, if you're the mom, saying yes to as much as you possibly can, which is very hard for me. I like things neat, and I'm a little bit controlling. It's like everyone's safe, everything's good. And with boys, especially, they're going to ask you to push the envelope a little bit outside, and it's really good for them if they can climb that magnolia tree as high as is okay and safe, but like push it a little bit. Or like today, my middle son, who's very into art right now, like painting everything, he asked me if he could collect different size rocks from the backyard and paint them. And so I was like, crap, it's going to be a mess, because he wanted, of course, to pull out all the acrylic paints, but he did that. And then he started collecting different size seed pods, and he was painting seed pods. And you know what? He had all these pages of art at the end. It was great, but it's the initial saying yes and letting, or my son who wants to dig and saw wood into pieces, and, like, so there's holes in the backyard. As much as you can to say yes to, it's worth it. It's worth it, even if it's an annoying mess.
They're going to start to take more ownership over their education. They're going to seek things out, and we want them to do that. We want them to, initiate research projects where they're just interested, so they're going to go for it, right? So the more you say yes, the more that they think that you will say yes when they ask to do something. Well, that's plus.
Yep.
All right, let's, because I'm worried about time, I want to talk real quick. I have a million ideas for things to do outside, but maybe let's talk about nature notebooks specifically first, so that we know we did that. So keeping a nature notebook is creating a treasure. Like, it's creating something that you will treasure and your children will treasure. Like, I can't speak highly enough about the practice. Give each child his or her own notebook. And we have the same ones that you do, Stephanie. This one's Sarah's, and it's made by Canson, but the rest of us we are very fortunate to have a Blick art supply store, like, within of my house. So the rest of us have Blick ones that look exactly like this.
Yeah.
And the paper is a little bit heavier. They started new ones here. So this is Sarah's. It's a little bit heavier paper, so it will take watercolor. Here's a page that she's watercolored. There's a little bit of bleed on this side, but she could still write if she wanted to. She couldn't paint through both, but so a ring-bound notebook, paper heavy enough to take some watercolor, bring the notebook, colored pencils, some portable watercolors, put it all in a backpack. It's not too heavy for a child to have their own in their backpack. Won't get away in the way of walking or hiking. You know, you just want to have their pack. And we keep ours packed like all the time, pretty much. When you start the notebook, we do have certain things on every page. So we're going to hope that these are better pages set up right. But the date, the time, the weather. Usually we put the location. This is in our backyard, so maybe she didn't think that was necessary. She's painted it here. She did a detail here of the leaf, like she pulled it out to do a detail. She's into this color palette thing. She likes showing.
I love it.
The paint. She's done that a lot. She did that here too. This is phlox. Again, like these are just all in the backyard. This one is echinacea coneflower. But so that she's painted it, she's drawn it and painted it. She's written down what she saw, and then later I have them go back and do a little research. Tell me something more about it and fill that in too. But my kids are older. If they were younger, a drawing, a labeling, and getting like the name, the date, that part of it would be plenty. Just where were we? What was the weather like? What did I see? Keep it super simple. And then one thing I like to do when they were little, and I haven't really done this in a while, maybe I will, is after they've done that, dig up a poem for them. And I write it so that they don't, I mean, I don't write the poem, like I copy the poem, so that they don't, you know, have that handwriting burden. But I make it pretty, and then they can paste it into their nature notebook in wherever it goes with whatever they found. And sometimes it's just fun to show them that there's poetry about what you found. Like this was so inspirational, somebody, they wrote a poem about it. And sometimes you can find good quotations. It's great if you can find scripture, just little things that I will dig up to give to them that just kind of says, I was noticing what you were noticing. Like I noticed what you wrote about, what you drew. I think it's super cool too. And I spent a few minutes finding somebody else who thought it was super cool. And this is what they said.
I love that. I've never thought of doing that before.
You know, like that's just me needing to have words to go with pictures. So Charlotte Mason students also kept a running list, which I wish we had thought to do at the very, I didn't start this. I should kind of jump in now, but like in the, you know how bullet journals kind of divide things out and stuff. So make a place in the back, like maybe up that last 5 pages of your nature notebook, and keep a running list of birds that you've seen, or a running list of flowers, or both. But just like, let's list all of them back here. And then you could really bullet journal it and cross check that with page numbers in the nature notebook. And I think that there are some planner geeky girls here who might like to do that. So, and then I think it's worth your time. First of all, moms should have nature notebooks too. And I haven't always been good about this. As a matter of fact, when we were unpacking, we found a nature notebook that that was dated the day Pope Benedict was elected Pope. And I remember that day we were out at our place, and my husband kept calling with like smoke reports. And anyway, so it was my nature notebook from that day. It had 2 pages filled out in it that day, on 2 pages, and nothing else. And my kids were like, what's the deal here, Mom? Like, what happened to your notebook? It's like, I don't know, maybe I just got so excited that I lost it. I have no idea why it only has that day in it, but it's a great thing if you can keep a nature notebook with your kids. And it's harder when your kids are little. Like, you're not you can't really take your eyes off of them enough to do that kind of drawing. But a lot of times we'll bring things home and draw them there. It's a good practice. Susan Schaefer Macaulay, she has a great book, For the Children's Sake. She said, if possible, it's good for the teacher or parent to keep a nature notebook too. It is a life we live together. And I'm not kidding, that quote just always brings tears to my eyes, because to have those notebooks and that journal of the life that we've lived outside together is really a beautiful thing. I mean, it's really, really cool. Mm-hmm. So along those lines, we want to empower them. And I think it's worth your time and effort to teach them to draw. And I'm not naturally gifted. There are people in my family, my oldest child was born knowing how to draw. My youngest child's blowing us away. But we all can learn those rudimentary skills, so that we can depict something pictorially on paper. There's so much out there in the way of drawing books, and YouTube tutorials and nature drawing YouTube tutorials, just ways to help them, especially if, for instance, there's a very famous rose garden nearby, and I'm told that in June it's phenomenal. So what I might do with my girls before we go is do some YouTube tutorials specifically on roses. This is how to draw a rose, and get them ready. You could certainly do that with birds. If you were going to have a bird watching day, birds are very hard for children to draw because they don't stay still. So it's helpful if you take a picture of that bird. Later on, as they get more adept, you want them to learn how to be true nature journalists. You can teach them the tricks that they learn to draw a bird in nature without taking the picture, but help them succeed, I guess, is my point. And some art lessons to go with the nature journal, not a bad idea at all.
Mm-hmm. You might be able to find also an artist in your town or at your church who would be very happy to pick up a half hour or an hour lesson a week. We were able to do that here with an artist who lives here, and it's not that expensive to have her come and teach the kids to draw. So, and it's amazing how, with someone who knows what they're doing, because I don't know how to draw, I wish I did. They learned a lot really quickly.
That's awesome.
Taking some nature drawing, sketching lessons. So I know everyone's not gonna be able to do that, but just keep your eye out, because you might find someone who's the art teacher for the local high school or something and would be happy to come, half an hour on her way home at 3:30 in the afternoon and do a lesson for you. So
that's a great idea. College,
yeah.
I would look for college students who are in the art department, or a lot of colleges have kind of a nature journaling segment. I don't know if a lot, but several do.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
All right, so before we go, because we're going to run out of time, people asked me about, what about when it's cold? And I'm going to be honest and tell you that I have said probably once a day since the calendar turned, I'm really nervous. What are we going to do about the winter? And part of that is we're in New England, and this is new. Part of that is I'm very, very aware of how good my mental health is when I'm outside, and I'm concerned about us being closed up in the house too much. And I've done some talking to my neighbors, like, how is it? What do I do? Because Connecticut is known for being out of doors all the time. Like, it's a very active, outdoor focused state. So just getting to know people here and talking to them about it has been good. My granddaughter was a kindergartner last year, and those kids have to have a full snowsuit at school. If it gets wet, it comes home, you have to send it back. They have to be dressed to go outside. And I think if it's above 20, maybe, I think that's the cutoff. So they get these kids outside. And really the great advice is to dress for the weather. There's I think this is a book. I know it's a Swedish proverb, but I'm fairly certain there's a book called There's No Bad Weather, Only Bad Clothing. And it's this whole idea of we've got to get our kids outside, and it doesn't matter what the weather is, we're going to do it. So briefly, a base layer, a mid layer, an outer layer, really cold, 4 layers, add another layer. You can layer socks and mittens too. Protect your face. You'll keep warmer if you've got like that baklava. Wait, baklava is Greek food. Balaclava, whatever. I don't know how to say it. Anyway, over your face. Keep moving. So this is when you might want to pick things up to bring them home or take pictures and then draw later. Because it really is almost impossible to draw. You don't want to sit still. You don't want it in the mitten thing, you know. Bring hot drinks. That way you can warm them up from the inside. Those hand warmers that are, you crush them and activate them.
Yep.
Those are awesome for their pockets. And just keep walking. Winter is great for astronomy. It gets dark earlier. The phases of the moon rises earlier. And the nights seem to be clearer very often. So it's great for that. Try night hikes, walks around the neighborhood at night. Keep a weather calendar, record sunrise and sunset, and teach them to look at the clouds and identify the clouds. All of that is such a great winter thing to do because weather is such an issue in the winter. The trees. So all the leaves are gone, and now you can see the shapes of the trees without the leaves. Drawing trees without leaves is a great idea, and it's also really good to have them pick a tree to follow through the seasons. So draw it without the leaves in the winter, and then watch the progression as the leaves come in the spring, and as it's in full leaf in the summer, and then what color does it turn in the fall? Have them have their favorite tree, and they're going to watch that tree all year long. So it's helpful if it's a tree nearby. You know, you want to be able to do that. Bird feeders, fill them up in the winter. There are, no matter where you live, there were birds who will come to your feeder. A lady told me that she has, sounds like a hot tub for birds, but like she has a bird bath that the water stays warmer, just warm enough so it's not freezing. They're not like hot tub warm, but it keeps the water from freezing, and the birds come. They take bird baths in the snow.
Wow.
And if you are lucky enough to live someplace where it snows, then definitely take some time to sit outside in the quiet of the snow. Like teach them how to do a silent nature study. We're just going to sit here in the quiet because snow makes everything quieter, and it's such a cool thing, and another awareness of senses thing, right? And if it's snowing, go outside with black construction paper, let them catch snowflakes, let them look at them under magnifying glasses. Next week, we're going to talk about living books in science, but like Snowflake Bentley is just a fabulous book when it snows, and then they can go outside and they can look at snowflakes. And then inside things during the winter, sprouting seeds, forcing bulbs, all the things that you can do to get ready for your garden. We didn't have time to talk about gardens, but you can imagine what I think about those. But we are planning on spending the winter really researching and really prepping for our gardens in the spring. And that's such a great thing. Kids can plant the seeds in the winter, in the early spring, and get them going, and just as much as you can, keep that green thing happening. So we're out of time.
Really? Because I could keep going. This is so fun.
I still have.
No, this is all good. This is all really, really good. So if anyone is going to get started with nature study for the first time after this call, what are the basics they're going to go? They're going to go to the craft store and get a notebook.
A notebook? You can get, I can't see if I would get a notebook, I get decent colored pencils.
Yeah.
Not all kid colored pencils are very good. A lot of them you have to really work to get that color on the paper, and that's just so counterproductive. I don't know why they do that with kids colored pencils. So a lot of times when you go to art stores, they'll let you test the pencils. You want one that they don't have to bear down real hard. Get a decent set of colored pencils. Get a set of watercolors that are portable. So just the little pans of watercolors are good. I'm looking to see, I think all our stuff is inside in Sarah's notebook, but you might also want to get watercolor markers. So you use them like regular magic markers, but then you can take a wet paintbrush and blend it the way you can watercolor, and you can layer it the way you can watercolor. And they're really portable. They're fun to take. Take a little water bottle with you so that you can mix your paints, then take water to drink as well. A magnifying glass is always a good thing. I try not to weigh those bags down very much at all. A few little Ziploc bags so that if they want to bring something home to sketch it later. The other thing is be sure to know what the rules are. Like our favorite place in the world, I see Anne's up here, and I'm gonna make sure she goes this year. Our favorite place to go in the world is Bull Run Regional Park in the springtime to see the bluebells, and we lived down there for a week. But you're not allowed to pick the bluebells. So, their impulse might be to do that, and they need to understand what they can and can't bring home. But I would bring a couple of Ziploc bags. I personally bring baby wipes everywhere I go. I don't even have a baby, but bring them. And snacks, also a good thing to bring. And then like a little first aid kit, not a bad idea either. And bug spray, if you're a bug spray person.
Whatever you use for getting a sting, I feel like we always get stung by something.
So
almost every time.
I bring Benadryl with me.
Oh, do you?
In all seriousness, when Mary Beth was about 5, we were up in Shenandoah. She found this beautiful caterpillar that had little white spokes all over it. This is in the first issue of Real Learning. And she let it crawl all over her. And then we watched her hands swell like crazy. And we were in like the middle of nowhere. And so I bring Benadryl with me wherever I go.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah, that's smart. I need to do that too. Oh, right. I had a caterpillar experience as a kid, so I'm like,
They're not as innocent as they appear.
They are not. Oh my goodness. Well, thank you so much for this. This was really, really good. We will have the recording up on our YouTube channels if you want to share this with a friend or go back through. And of course, a perfect resource to go along with our discussion is Elizabeth's book, Real Learning Revisited. You can get your copy on Amazon or elizabethfoss.com or through her Instagram page, which is also Elizabeth Foss. So set us up for next week. What are we going to talk about next week?
So next week, we're going to talk about science and living books. So we're coming in from the field, and we'll talk about living books. We'll talk about science and history and living books.
It's going to be 3 hours next week, right? Right. Okay, good. Okay, good. Just checking.
That's what I'm tempted to do up in our library, like pull out picture books.
You should.
Diversion would really not be a good thing. I need to.
So. All right. Well, thank you all so much for coming tonight. Have a great weekend, and we'll hopefully see you next week on our next call.
Yep. Bye. Thank you.